All right, we're covering a big topic today, rent control in Massachusetts. Myself and Meena, Sharma, we're going to cover rent control, which is a big topic here in Massachusetts recently, as some organizations have brought this forward and are looking to push it forward. But does it really make sense? Meena is a longtime local real estate agent here in Massachusetts. She has a lot of experience, but most importantly, she's done a lot of research on this topic lately. And we were chatting on the DMs on Instagram, and we thought this would be a great topic to cover for people here in Massachusetts to learn more about rent control and whether it does make sense or not. Meena, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this with me. I think there's so much information here about what's good, what's bad, what makes sense, and where things are. And I kind of went down, as we call it in 2026, the rabbit hole of things. And then I could not help myself in wanting to talk about it and share what is actually happening and what's being proposed, and also who's proposing it, who's funding it. So a lot of really cool stuff was learned. I think we'll have to bite-size this, but I'm super excited to share what I've learned, to open this conversation and actually make sure that what ends up on the ballot in November is actually something that benefits the residents of Massachusetts, makes affordability better, and the quality of housing as well. So all of those things plug in, but I'm really excited to be here and talk about this.
Excited to be here with you. So let's break it down. Can you explain what this 2020? We don't know if it's going to be a ballot proposal yet, but there are a lot of proposals coming forward. What have you read about it, and what do you know about the rent control proposal?
So the proposal that is currently being reviewed and talked about, the big thing is a 5% cap on rent. So if you have a $2,000 apartment, the most that your rent should go up in 12 months is $100. It's either 5% or CPI. So CPI is Consumer Price Index, that's inflation. And for 2025, that was 2.7%. Whichever is lower is the maximum that you can do. So for a $2,000 apartment, I should have done that math, but half of 100, the max rent increase can be about $55. So if you think about all of the things that change in the expense of owning a property, taxes and everything else, in proportion, everything grows. So that is not really a viable uniform percentage that makes sense for all properties. And so it's very limiting. There's a lot of properties in Massachusetts that aren't at market rent, and it impacts them in the long run to even be sustainable places to live. So that is the big thing on the ballot. That is the main thing. And then there's a ton of exclusions that are supposed to be helpful, and we'll dig into what they are and how they actually impact in the real world.
So you mentioned CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, or as we all know it recently, inflation. We've experienced a lot of inflation since 2020 until now.
Yep.
It's coming down around that 2% mark, which is great. But let's not forget, in 2010 and 2020 timeframe, we virtually had no inflation. It was probably averaging about 1%. So that's what landlords would be capped at, essentially. And yes, we are experiencing high inflation, but it's not always going to be like this, as we've seen historically. But yeah, I mean, let's dive a bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
So this is a statewide initiative. It's not letting communities decide. It would be, these are the rules from the state and you have to abide by it. Everybody in the Commonwealth.
Correct. As the current proposal stands, it is a statewide mandate that would go into effect, which to me means there's something bigger at play. Because for something this significant to be put in front of people for legislation to vote on, you'd think we'd want to try and make sure that what we're implementing across the board, the ramifications make sense. In operation, it makes sense. So to me, I think there's a lot of bigger money. We'll dive into that at a point where we talk
Yeah.
about funding some of this stuff on the back end. I don't agree with that. I think we should start small, test it out, see if it works, if it achieves what we want it to achieve or what it says it's going to achieve, and then do a statewide mandate if that was the direction that we took it. So currently it is proposed for all 351 cities and towns. I'm not aligned with that, but that is what is on the table, and that seems very aggressive and drastic. and seems much bigger than just we want to fix rental things. I think there's other things happening in the back end that will show up. We'll talk about it.
And I think you can't put everybody in the same bucket, right? We know that Western Mass rents are much lower
Exactly.
than Greater Boston. So if you kept those guys, like what, you're going to give them a cap of $10 increase a month? Like,
That's nothing.
I mean, a year, sorry.
That's nothing.
Like that's nothing. And sometimes it may be nothing if inflation is close to zero. You did mention to me beforehand as we were speaking that this would go based on the first lease.
So
Can you break that down for us?
yes. So one of the terms of the current proposal is that whatever the rent was as of January 31st, 2026 will become the baseline. So to put this into an example, I have a condo I purchased 4 years ago. I've lived in it all 4 years. But before that, the owner lived in it for another 4 or 5 years. Prior to that, it was rented. I think the market rent was, at least what I could find in records, was about $1,400. I was to put this place on market for rent in 2026, $1,500 would be my baseline. Between my mortgage, interest, taxes, my condo fee, which are my fixed expenses, I would not cash flow. I would have to pay out of pocket for someone to live in my home. To put that in perspective, think about people who have a single family house. That's one of the other exclusions, is if you are 4 units or less. So let's take a single family home, for example. Your grandma wants to buy another house somewhere else, rent out the single family. That single family would be rented at the last known rent for its base. Now we've impacted someone's ability to move, to be mobile, to potentially find the right time to sell their place before making a transition. It's setting people back for a time when we don't exist. Like, I can't afford to rent this place. I'd pay someone to live in my home. Like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense for someone 30 years older than me or at my age. The hard line that they drew in the proposal for it to be retroactively when we're not voting until November doesn't even make sense economically or in general for somebody else. So that's another little cute caveat that they had there.
Yep. And I mean, I can talk as on the landlord perspective too. I purchased a condo in Stoughton last year, and it's cash flowing a little bit. As we know, mortgage rates, I got a 7% mortgage rates on it.
And you're
We're not making much money. Assuming a rent cap or rent control comes in place 5 years from now, I probably would not be cash flowing, assuming taxes, insurance, condo fee is going to go up. And it would be very difficult for me to think about holding that property long term and maintaining it. So not only it's going to impact me, but it's going to impact, it's going to impact the maintenance and also the property value, right? If, let's say, this happens statewide, you're going to see a lot of investors dumping their properties. So what would do to the real estate market? You will see values possibly going down. But let's play the devil's advocate. Let's look at the renters today. I think we could argue that short term, this could have a positive impact for renters right now, maybe year 1 or 2. But tell me, I mean, what are supporters of this saying? How would it help renters with their housing costs?
That's a super great question. I think it builds in predictability, which is nice because you really never know what rent is going to go up by how much. I would say most good landlords are their own category from bad landlords and big corporations. They do reasonable increases because when you do a reasonable increase, you have a good tenant, you want them to stay. This caps that ability though. So if taxes went up that year, which both have, by the way, insurance goes up every year, the need to maintain a property, all those little expenses add up. So where does that get made up? With slight changes. So what rent control will do in the immediate short term is it fixes the increase, which allows you to predict, it allows you to figure things out. I think the reverse effect is that people may not move as much. So now we have flat inventory. People are not transiting enough. They're holding the spaces they have that are good. I think
we can talk about New York City too in a little bit. We don't need to dive right now into that.
I think we have
but we can look at the case study from New York City. But I am personally a big believer in the American dream, that everyone is out there. And I believe most renters, they want to eventually buy a home
Yeah.
one day. This will disincentivize, just like we see in the New York City rent controlled apartments, which is a small portion of them. Many of those renters stay in there for decades. And what you're doing here, yes, you may be stabilizing rent for a little bit, but you are holding people back from thinking big, from going out there and purchasing their own place, because they're going to get comfortable with that payment. And it's fine. Maybe not everyone is in the same place. I'm a big believer that we should help those in need, but there is no need to do a blanket type of proposal for everybody. Everything should be specific to individual needs. We know very well we have many issues in this country and the state, and we know whenever there's like a big blanket law, a lot of times it may get abused. Things don't go right for many different reasons. But I'm a big believer that this would hold back a lot of future homeowners, first-time home buyers, that it's going to put them in that comfortable space to rent their whole life. And we know the wealth of renters compared to wealth of homeowners, people that own a home, it's like, I
Night
think
and
it's like
day.
a 30, 40 times difference. It's insane. So
No,
these proposals, I really believe they are brought forward from these politicians or whoever support them in order to push their agendas and get them to stay in office, because the messaging is great, cheap rent. But how about we look at what else is going to happen a year from now or a few years from now?
no, and
That was my
one, I believe in the power of ownership. If you think of COVID, how many people bought houses because their rent was catching up to what a mortgage payment would look like? And you're like, I would rather own. I think if you ask most people, they would rather have their own place, something that they grow equity, they build. Think of all the people building generational wealth, buying multifamilies. We're halting a lot of that and reducing people's ability to qualify for things. So no, I'm entirely with you that it creates an air of complacency, and that just doesn't seem very American, to be quite honest with you. Without getting
exactly.
political, we do have both sides of people that are looking at this. Our governor currently is anti-rent control because I think it's not a blanket approach, to your point. Not all cities are in the same place. City of Boston arguably is at the highest rents, whereas somewhere in Springfield, they probably have room to grow and appreciate. Applying the same flat rule kind of halts everybody at the level playing field, and we're just not there for this to be a good solution. But let's jump into maybe some of the exclusions that are
Yeah, let's do
included
it.
in this current proposal. So one good thing I do like about it, which is good and bad depending on where you are, is anyone who owns a property 4 units or less, so a 4-family, 3, 2, or a single family, as long as you live in it, it's excluded. But what happens when you buy a 3-family to kind of get started and then you move out? Now it's all subject to rent control, right? So you have to plan your exits accordingly. You have to do it correctly. And honestly, it disincentivizes people to continue purchasing real estate. House hacking is kind of the term that is used in our industry of you buy one, you live in it for a few years, and then you move on to the next one. Now it's all subject to rent control, but as long as you live in it, it's good. So I think that is a net positive piece from all of the exclusions that are included. Their exclusion that it's a little bit vague at the moment, what's currently sitting in the proposal, and they are discussing how to look at this, is nonprofits, religious organizations, and educational housing. So those dorm costs never get cheaper. Sidrit and I went to Suffolk. I was an
Yep.
off-campus student. I don't know if you lived on campus,
No, I did not.
but the
I mean, the
cost
cost, the
is,
cost is, I don't even know what it is exactly today,
yeah.
but back then it was like 15 grand to live.
Which is crazy because you shared a room with 2 to 3 people you didn't know and arguably at some point you didn't like. They have no caps, so they can go up 50% if that's what the market demands. And so that's a little bit of a nuance because they get other exceptions based on their
So
status.
how is that fair?
I didn't say it was. It's
So you're
up for review if this will apply to them, but as it stands, they're excluded from this rent cap.
yeah. We're just going off of whatever proposals are right now, but how is it fair to small mom and pop investors? And I know many of them because I have them as my clients
Yeah.
that they buy people that have 3, 4, 5 condos or multifamilies. I see those as, we're not talking about BlackRock and these huge companies, but there's a lot of small time investors that own a few properties. They manage them themselves. I don't think this is going to benefit those guys
You know what else is included?
or us.
We don't benefit. But if BlackRock came and built a 50-unit building for 10 years, they don't have to deal with the rent cap. So that's another nuances, and I kind of jumped ahead into the different category. But all
No,
new
thanks.
construction from the last 10 years, I believe it does go retroactively currently as it stands. So anything 2016 to 2026, think of all the complexes in your city and mine. I live in Everett. And I've seen thousands of apartments go up, which, we can discuss their pricing and what they are, but all of those are not subject to the rent cap. So I know this bill focuses a lot on big corporations going against them and this, and I'm not anti-corporation. I'm fairly a capitalist person in nature who doesn't like to survive. But if you think about it, the only people paying the price is people who are regular landlords because the big corporations are exempt. And then if you think about the premise of why they build these buildings and they eventually sell, now we're also capping them, which in its own way will de-incentivize them to continue building because they're not able to even get their returns. At 10 years, you're done, which is the most strictest policy across the country. I think other states that have explored rent control or have it are 15 years. Massachusetts is a lot more aggressive, which is a big deal. We have a lot of stuff in the pipeline right now, that are going up that may be impacted by this. What do you think about
That is
exclusion?
insane.
Feel fair? Does it feel very Massachusettsonian, which is a new word I created? Bostonian and Massachusetts together.
Massachusettsonian.
It's not an Italian
I like
flavor,
that.
which is part of our state's history, so I'm just bringing it all together.
Yeah, no. Wow. So if you're BlackRock, you come in here, you want a big development, you are not part of those rules. You are excluded
You get to
because
sell at market rent.
wow,
Feels
unbelievable.
that part woke me up. It got me
But
to think
I'm not surprised, but the message out there is, hey, rent control, where you're not going to pay high rents anymore. But most of the voters don't look at exclusions and all the other things. But for mom and pop investors, which there's so many in Massachusetts, those are going to be affected from day one.
Yeah. There's a vicinity of 60 to 70%, and that may fluctuate, of rental housing in Massachusetts is owned by mom and pop owners. So
How much? What was the percentage?
I think it's like 60 or 70%. I don't know if that's changed. I can probably look that up while we're chatting, but it's up there.
Wow.
A lot of our ownership is us, right? Me, you, our family, our friends, your clients, my clients. We're the ones that are getting impacted.
So do you really believe that rent control would increase affordability long term, or is it only like a short term relief? What are your thoughts?
It feels like it's going to be a short-term relief because the longer-term consequences will impact the quality of housing, will impact how much even a new build that has a 10-year exception, they don't build these buildings for them to last 10 years and then they drop the structure. It lasts for many years. So they do have to factor in growth, their exit strategy, how revenue works for them. I think the consequences long-term are much more negative than are being talked about because right now we are at an affordability crisis of all kinds of things, right? Between this, I'd love for someone to cap my utility bill. Like,
Same.
we have rate hikes or whatever they're called. I think it's National Grid that's putting a increase of a surcharge between certain hours of the day. Like, why don't we cap that? Why are we not focusing on the thing that would help every single homeowner in every single bracket? Just because you own a home doesn't make it easier, right? It's expensive to own a home. You call your landlord to fix everything. You are your landlord. Welcome to ownership, right?
Exactly.
And so it's frustrating that it's not focusing on fixing affordability in ways that would be meaningful and capping corporations, which is the message, even in rent control. But in practice and the exclusions that are there, especially for a city like for a state like Massachusetts, we have a lot of educational housing. We have a lot of schools. We have a lot of institutions. We have a lot of old historical buildings that probably fall under the nonprofit and religious category, and dig deeper into exactly what that is, but they're all excluded. So who's included is really what needs to be talked about more. And I haven't seen that conversation anywhere. So thank you for opening the door to
Yeah,
talk about that, because it's us. We're getting impacted.
exactly. What fixes affordability? And we know between you and I, we've spoken about this a lot. It's supply. Bring in more units to the market. We've had a housing shortage in the United States since after 2010. Developers slowed down building because of the recession.
Yeah.
And to this day, we are about 4 million homes short in the US. And I don't know the specific number for Massachusetts, but we know because there's so much housing demand, but there's not enough supply. So if you make permitting much easier
Yep.
for houses to be built much faster, if we have more supply in the market, you're going to see things stabilize.
Yeah.
You're not going to see home prices going up by 20% like they did in, or 19% like they did in 21, or 10% in 22. They're going to be more like 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
But we don't have that here, especially in Massachusetts. Building something new, and I talk to developers. I have friends that are hard money lenders that deal with developers. It takes time.
Yep.
What they need to focus on is working with the local governments, cities, towns, and making sure that the permitting process gets faster.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a city or town, there's only one person that is in charge of permitting. It's crazy. I mean, I don't want to name towns and whatnot because I'm local. I'm from here, but
Me too. Next thing you know, our permits are sitting in
exactly.
pipeline for something. We love it here. We want it to stay good and affordable. Well, we're not that.
No, we want to make it
We want
better.
to make it better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want to make it better, and that's why we're here. That's why we're having this conversation. But I really do think it starts with supply. You figure out supply. You give incentive to builders to build faster. You're going to see home prices stabilize. You're going to see rent staying the same or come down. But if you go capitalistic and you start putting caps, you're going to have landlords selling their properties. They're not going to be maintaining their properties. You're going to see deteriorating conditions. You're going to see renters not incentivized to move, right? So it's going to be even harder for new renters to find other units out there if all the units in the states are going to be rent stabilized. It's going to create a huge, huge problem, just like it is in New York for those 22,000 apartment units that are currently being rent stabilized or subsidized, whatever they call it in New York City.
Yeah. And I think on that point, it's thinking about renters becoming owners, right? Even if we think about, oh, this inventory is going to show up the market, who's going to qualify to buy all of that? Because let's be so honest, when we buy real estate in Massachusetts, you look at a property, it's been owned by the same family for 30 years, first time on the market. I know everybody has seen that tagline. I don't know what that means to anybody. All that tells me that the rents are super low. They haven't updated in years. And there's every single time without fail, 30 years relieving the same family, right? It's because they bought it for 200 grand, but now they're selling it for, say, 1.5 million. I think we can illustrate an example.
Yeah, I would love to. And if I can quickly talk about my side of things as a mortgage broker, when someone comes to me to qualify for a multifamily property, we look at things like their income, their current expenses. So there are caps on debt to income ratio. So when we look at their income, if they're looking to buy a multifamily, they also get some help from the rents from the other units that they're not going to live in to qualify for that property. Now, if we're going to start a rent cap now, 3 to 5 years from now, that the rent is going to be capped for, and it's not going by market rent, assuming market rent is going to be higher over time, we can assume that that client is going to qualify for less. But to your point, for your clients, if it's a seller that's owned the property for many years, whoever's going to buy that property is never going to offer top dollar, knowing they're going to have a cap on rent. And
Right.
we can go to your examples now too. Thank you.
Yeah, no. And that's exactly it. Here's an example, right? 3-family up for sale in Somerville where rents are kind of crazy. But 1.5 million, say it's bringing in about $100,000 a year for rent. Average price of each unit is about $2,700, right? You buy it, those are all of the respective expenses that you have to factor. Property taxes, which never go down, even if you pay off your mortgage. Insurance, which seems to be going up every time you go for a renewal because something is happening in the world that causes that. Owner paid utilities, think about your electric, your other things. Snow plowing, maintenance, and other regular upkeep things that an owner has to do. We just bucket it in there, which actually is a pretty conservative amount. Water and sewer, another landlord expense, vacancy, property management, reserve for repairs. So those are standard things that one would look at when you're purchasing something. And this is a very quick and dirty example. Net income would be about $63K. So you make $100,000 a year on a property you're buying for $1.5 million. Your regular profit before any mortgage, assuming you're buying this cash, you're making $63,000 a year, which sounds good. But in the current market, we did a little bit of mock-up. 30-year mortgage, 6.25% interest, 20% down, which is about $300,000.
Yep, 1.2 million.
Yes. So your mortgage would then be $93K just in mortgage payments. So if you were to purchase this property at 1.5 million, you would net profit, net loss $30,000, which is crazy. So the reason it may actually sell for 1.5 million, and this is not a perfect math, so let's take that with a grain of salt, is we buy it for its market potential. So currently it's about 100K. At its full potential, each unit should go for $3,200. That changes a little bit of the narrative of we buy it for its potential. Now, that's
And also, once you move out, right, you have the potential of renting the other unit.
exactly. So you make these calculations, and the reason something will go for more is you're going to live in one unit, you're going to rent the other two. The income from the other two units will support your one unit. And it makes your living expenses a little bit easier. You're building equity, you're buying property, you're growing your family legacy. All of the things come in with property ownership. So your net loss is about $15,000. Sidrit, if I come to you and say, I want to purchase this property with this information, what do I have to do to get qualified? And remember, guys, it's $1.5 million purchase price, $300K down for about 20% is where we're at. What would I need to do to qualify to make the numbers net out where you would lend me a loan?
Well, I mean, looking at this, I mean, we need the rental income, so we used what, 27 and 3,200 per unit. Obviously, the more income that we have, I didn't run any like specific numbers, but the more income we have, the higher the chances are for you to qualify for this home. Obviously, we have net income of 78,000 in this scenario
And
of year one market, but if we are being limited to a lower rent, like we would need to have a much higher down payment.
and that
So
right.
investors or first-time home buyers would have to come in with more money.
And there's no cap on that. I've certainly purchased real estate where the rents were at least $700-800 less than market. We paid close to kind of the market one scenario is if everything is increased, we invest in the property over 3-4 years, this will be a good purchase. But at the time of that purchase, the reason we bought it was because it had potential. It's kind of like when you date somebody, you hope that they're going to change for potential. Same idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're working on something together and improving it. If we're saying that we can't limit beyond a certain percentage or certain amount, that property that is worth 1.5 million in the way that we currently transact real estate will no longer be worth 1.5 million. So we did a little mock-up of assuming that it had to cash flow, right? It's not going to sell for the same price because we're limiting what its potential is at the end, and it's already predictable, it's already known. So there isn't really room, unless you drop the whole structure, for you to maximize value. And I think, and I'll not go into that, the second part of it, but I think the big thing here is that the people that are selling properties that were bought for pennies on the dollar, that are selling for much more now, are older people. This is their retirement plan. Like, we're not
Yep.
trying to screw it to the man or somebody that, like, arbitrarily is like a sticky, I was going to use a swear word, but I'm going to try not to swear.
It's okay. It's
No,
fine.
let me,
We're adults.
yeah, I know, but adults might not watch this. We'll see. You got to get the younger folks involved. But the point being made there is that, oh, geez, and I lost my point.
You make a great point
I-
that properties in crappy condition, that a new investor would be like, hey, let me go in this property, fix it. I'll take a loss the first year or two, but I know I'm going to get so much more once it's fully renovated. Those properties are going to be even less desirable.
yeah. And it's not.
That's an amazing, honestly, we weren't even talking about this.
It's like I was just thinking about the people who have these sales that are their retirement plans. We're grossly impacting the people that have purchased homes, that have been contributors of the community, buying things, creating housing, all of that. They get screwed at the end of their journey when they're like, I'm ready to retire. I want to buy a condo somewhere else. That greatly impacts their ability to do that in a meaningful way. And I think as much as it is fight against the big landlords, it's really the regular landlords that are getting shafted. Younger people not being able to qualify for purchasing this, and older people that are trying to exit this now get less money. Why? Because we wanted to fix affordability in a way that we didn't think about the implications to actual people. I feel that way about policy in general. A lot of stuff has happened in Massachusetts related to the real estate industry over the past year that I'm like, did somebody like simulate this to see what actually happens? I mean, we did that with brokerage fees. I'm like, some big landlord wants to pay us, and we're saying no, it has to come from the tenant. The whole point of changing policy is that it should do what it's intended to do. And when you do it kind of haphazardly, or a something is better than nothing approach, we're going to end up screwing people that have been longstanding citizens and owners and contributors of our communities that are paying the price that bigger landlords and corporations who can afford it won't be paying that. And I don't think that that's fair. I don't think it makes sense. And for that reason, it makes me question the advocacy groups that are pushing this, also statewide, of who's funding them and where their money is coming from. Because why are we not thinking about all of these consequences? I haven't seen that in conversation anywhere. So, Sidra, I don't know how you feel about
Yeah.
that, but I feel like it bothers me that something that's supposed to be good for us and is pitched as good for us is actually going to hurt us the most. And that isn't, the math isn't mathing, if we can.
Well, we used to have rent control, I think, back in the 90s,
Yeah.
which was rescinded. It didn't work then. It's not working in New York City and all the other markets
Yeah.
that it's currently in. I don't know. I think help needs to be more targeted to individuals that actually need it. And with these programs that you're talking about, they need to have like pilot programs instead of rolling it out nationwide. And all these like ballot questions, they have big organizations that back them, right? All the ads and everything. And people get sold, right? Because not everyone has time to read, just like you did, and thank you for doing that, because you spend a lot of valuable time. But not everybody has that time. I don't have that time, especially people with kids and family. It's hard. So you have these big organizations pushing one narrative, and then it becomes law. And who gets impacted the most? The mom and pop. The mom and
Always.
pop folks, mom and pop businesses. But it will be interesting to see if this does get passed and who's going to be pushing it. I haven't seen too much push yet. I know our governor, you said that she's not
Against
pro it, but
she's
I also don't hear going against it too much either. It's not like she's
think it's
putting it out too much, because I'm on social media. I would have seen something. We're all reading stuff on our phones and our laptops, but I want to see more people like us, to be honest, going out there educating folks.
Yep.
And if there is a better side to it, maybe a short-term rent cap could make sense, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, hey, we say that we've had a lot of affordability issues the last 5 years. How about we propose a temporary rent cap for 2 years? I
Even
don't think most investors would mind. I wouldn't mind it.
I mean,
I wasn't probably even planning to increase rent for the next 2 years.
and it's funny you say that. We did not increase rent in some of our places because we were at market, fairly reasonable, didn't see a reason to shake up tenancy, left it pretty lateral, or whatever that word is, flat. But I think something that is a common like misinterpretation of things is landlords don't just willy-nilly throw a rent, because if something is worth $2,000 and you rent it out, or you put the price as $4,000, that will sit there. It will literally sit there unless you don't understand how things work. But the market determines what the rent is. So if you think about the impact of, and I feel like now this might be semi-political-ish, but last year, a lot of students did not come into Massachusetts, right? For visa issues, visa delays, things that are happening for safety, or just personal preference of, hey, I don't want to go into this environment. Students did not come into our state at the levels that they did. I'm waiting to see if there's any official reports, but vacancy in the city of Boston alone was exponentially higher than in past years. You didn't see that many available units in those college towns and areas because there was vacancy. So as much as they charged $3,500, $4,000 for a 3-bed or whatever, they had to bring their rent down, because the only thing more expensive than a bad tenant is a vacancy, right? You
Yes.
can't afford a vacancy. It's like, I would rather somebody paid $3,000 for a $4,000 unit to get me through the winter season and get a new tenant or something. So I think this misnomer that we can charge whatever. No, if you charge whatever and you're being unreasonable, nobody will rent it.
No, the market is going to price you out. The
Exactly.
market is going to dictate that.
Yeah.
It's all about supply and demand. We know that. If you have a better unit than me, you're going to charge more rent. And it's because it makes sense. If your property is it's a new property versus something existing, it's going to be worth more. The market dictates that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's very capitalistic if we go in and put rent control, like I don't know. I'm super capitalistic. I'm pro American dream. I'm about working hard, working my butt off, which is what I do. And I think everyone in this country has a chance. If we're
Absolutely.
telling some people that, hey, you know what, it's okay for you to be in this place for this long, because we're gonna stabilize your rent, I think you're gonna do that person this favor ultimately. I truly believe that we have to push each other to do better. Like I think personally, I think we gotta increase supply. That's what the issue is and has been for the last 15 years
Yeah.
here in Massachusetts and many other states.
And I don't think it's just any supply, it's strategically pushing it. For the amount of times you see buildings get approved left and right, there's some affordable units. I think with the right incentives, why don't we push condo development or home ownership, right? That's not profitable, but the state can make it profitable. They can find ways with tax write-offs, with giving grants, with giving funding. I mean, we know they can't manage housing, because have you seen city-run housing? Between its condition and management, they're not doing a great job, but they can incentivize builders and developers who are looking to make a profit. There's nothing wrong with making a profit for your hard work, because anyone who's done a live-in renovation knows it's miserable. Imagine how much harder it is to manage something of development. So they can fix housing by incentivizing certain type of housing. There are developers that exclusively focus on affordable stuff. They take advantage of grants. They take advantage of tax write-offs or credits or something. Listen, in America, we hate paying taxes. So make it worthwhile and you will get the supply that we need. But limiting people in other ways, it's like a cheap Band-Aid solution. Like, you go in the water for 5 minutes, it falls off. It defeats the purpose of it. That's what rent control feels like to me. And that was a very specific example.
Yeah,
But,
I
like,
think it's a great point.
it sound like I feel like parents will understand this, or adults who scrape themselves all the time. But no, I think there's better ways to do it, and the more that I look into pro-rent control and anti-rent control, trying to understand where solution lies has been really fun and eye-opening. In parallel, I'm also kind of looking at the larger foundations and organizations that are sponsoring the local community efforts, because for it to be a statewide thing seems like there's something bigger at play, because every city could now, they're not limited. They can all put rent control into effect. Why are they not doing it? Because it doesn't make sense, right?
Exactly.
Somebody is so passionate about it, do it, right? Why are you
Yeah.
pushing this broader, bigger negative for more coverage? Like, it did, and that'll be like my conspiracy brain, if you will. But I'm like, there's something bigger at play, and I've been digging into it, but I haven't gotten far enough to talk about it so that it makes sense. Um,
No, I'll tell you,
but
it's so they can
it's
stay in office, so they can get more votes, so they can be
not even
voted in from
politicians.
people. And then in 4 or 5 years from now, they're not gonna care that they're gonna be out of office. It's all about,
But
like what sells to the voters, cheaper rent. Oh, wow, yes,
let me
like
I don't know, and I'm gonna use Mayor Wu as the example of, I don't know how she's behind rent control and then increased property taxes by 13%. So you're kind of screwing somebody twice,
yeah,
that is in ownership, and it's like, I don't think enough landlords are in the conversation, because supposedly about 67% of voters in Massachusetts are in favor of this. I would like to know the makeup of that population, because truly, I don't think landlords are paying attention, or they haven't seen it, or they're not realizing that they're the only ones getting shafted. Because I would like to think that if big buildings were part of this and didn't have an exclusion, that they would be advocating harder. And right now, they're not incentivized to, because it doesn't impact them right now.
yeah, let me tell you how much you can charge for rent, but I'm also gonna increase your taxes 13%.
Isn't that crazy?
How about that? You should invest in more units down the road.
And there's a lot of really great landlords that have owned something for 40 years that just consistently go up. They're nowhere near the market rent. Like, you're screwing those people at the same front as greedy landlords. And listen, everybody has lived in a place with a shitty landlord. We're not here to defend anybody, but there's a lot of good landlords that are going to pay the price for something that, like, it just doesn't make sense. And we're not thinking about the longest standing residents here that are gonna get screwed in retirement. It's like, we
A
care about
lot of
old
my
people, but we don't care about your finances, go figure it out. And that's why
a
we
lot of my clients that I speak to, when they have like a huge rent increase, it's usually after they've renovated their building.
Mhm.
They've done like some major renovations. And that I can understand, because they've put 50 to $100,000 in capital. And obviously it shouldn't be rented at the same price as something that's in a crappy condition,
Yeah,
right? But just like you said, most landlords, and again, there are, I'm sure, many shitty landlords,
yeah.
they will raise rents or try to raise rents for a observant amount of times, but most of the time I think most people are reasonable.
Yeah.
If a mom and pop landlord is making a few $100 of cash flow, every month, or a couple of $100, they're happy, they're covering their expenses, property value goes up over time. There's no reason for them to go in and increase rent by $200 unless they've put in 35 grand in expenses, which that makes sense, right?
And that's the other thing, is, like, a lot of the narrative is, well, landlords won't renovate, and they won't do this. And the reason they won't, or they'll be less incentivized, is unit turns over. Someone's been living there for 5, 6 years. You've gotta change the flooring, you've probably gotta change some cabinetry. Paint is expensive as hell. So even if you spent $20,000 fix it, which sounds like a lot. If you've gotten a quote recently, it's
No, it's
actually
not.
very reasonable. You're barely getting half a bathroom out of that sometimes.
That's yeah, one
One
tiny
bathroom, I think,
bathroom.
is 15K for like Home Depot grade, like stick on the wall bathtub scenario, right? And it takes a full year of rent, if not longer, to even make up for that investment in your property. Now, if you cap it, why would somebody spend $20,000? Where is that money coming from? So, as much as landlords are pitched evilly, I don't think a tenant that hasn't owned or hasn't been a landlord or paid towards a rehab of some kind understands the economics behind why somebody would not do it. We had a place that everything had to be redone. It was honestly really bad. We were happy when this tenant moved out because they've been living there for so long. But you can't renovate a home when someone's living in it. So when they left, 23,000 was spent. It took a year and a half at the new rent to recoup that money back and
Oh
then
yeah,
profit. So it seems easy, but it's like money doesn't grow on trees. Like people work hard out of their like we had to put our own money into it to do the renovation and then it paid us back. Right. But if you're limiting the fact that I can't now charge better rent, just market rent, nothing exorbitant, why would I spend all that money for that return to be spaced out over 5 years?
exactly.
And we had to refinance on top of that at 6% instead of 3.5. So
God,
it was painful. It's okay. It's okay. It's
it
part
was
of
an adjustable rate. Sorry, I don't mean to, bring back terrible memories.
listen, 3.5% for a commercial purchase in 22 was iconic.
Yeah,
And look, it was a good buy. It works. It makes sense. It's still maths, but like it wasn't the same old. And honestly, the profit of a few years, heating system, one after the other has to go. It has to get repaired and it only gets more expensive. And
yeah.
I think part of our conversation we were thinking about talking about this is like humanizing this with real examples of it impacts buying power. It impacts old people retiring and their scenario. It impacts landlords. It literally costs all of us something. I'm not sure we have a solution following this conversation, but I think a Band-Aid fix is more harmful than, like not doing anything, like leaving it alone and fixing segments versus a sweeping kind of semi
Hmm.
okay thing. I think it's going to do a lot more damage. And we're already like heading down a path where affordability is getting harder and harder. That we should not throw something else into the mix because housing is something everybody needs. Everybody deserves dignified living. I'm all for that, but good God, like, do we need to go down this path to get there? And I don't think that's
Yeah, no.
necessary.
Does everybody need the rent stabilized prices? No. Rent control? No.
Yeah,
Give it to the elderly that are in a position where they cannot afford the rent. Stabilize their rent or subsidize it.
yeah,
That's why I say target it to whoever needs it if they are in need, especially the elderly that maybe their social security doesn't cover or whatever supplements they have. Sure, but making it capped for a 25-year-old that should be at, like right out of college, that they should be hunting for a better job, they should be hunting to do better, maybe start a business, whatever. It's the wrong approach
yeah.
that it's going to impact the state negatively. It's not going to show short term. It's not going to show in 1 to 2 years. It's going to be a shit show, and then in 5 years, it's gonna go back to where it was. And now we're gonna try to find other solutions. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how this goes. I'd love to do this again, maybe 3 to 6 months down the road. But before we wrap it up, what are next steps from here? What
Next
have you read out there?
next steps is to follow the advocacy on both sides, like actually getting into it. So I did speak to some folks that are not for it, and then I've been doing a little bit of digging and people that are for it, what those organizations are, what their work looks like, where their funding is coming from. So for me personally, it is getting outside truly, and learning more about the pros and cons. Are we missing something? Or are we purely looking at it from a data numerical standpoint? That is how my brain works, so that is how I look at it. But I also
Mhm.
am a human-centered person, so I don't wanna miss something critical, so I wanna make sure that that's thought about. And then I really do wanna understand where the money and advocacy and who's pushing this statewide thing, because it doesn't feel right, and I've read some things, and I'm gonna hold off on those until I form a better opinion, if you will, that's backed by data. But I really wanna look into it and stay on top of it and join the advocacy on both ends because I think this impacts us very directly and the switch will be like this, even if
Yep.
whether there's adjustments to it or something like that. So I'd love to I'm going to stay on top of it to see how things shake out. And my running theory is that PE and big buyers the institutional buyers that we're trying to avoid, will come and swoop this stuff up when people can't keep up with it. And that seems so much worse than your next door neighbor buying your property or something like that. So we'll see.
So are we expecting this to be in a question ballot in Massachusetts?
So it has about 125,000 signatures, and you only need 75,000 to be there. I know there is validity.
So it will be there.
Yes, but I think they're at least the latest I read, they're validating a little bit of the signatures, but I have a feeling it will end up on the ballot. What the final proposal looks like, I hope, is different than what we're currently looking at right now. Because those exclusions, some of the gray areas, some of the exceptions that they're making defeat the purpose of doing it. And I would like to think that even if you're not a landlord or a landlord and you're a renter, that you're not trying to screw the everyday landlord, because that is what this would effectively do. And so I plan to be part of the conversation to advocate and just talk about it, answer people's questions and learn their perspective. And I've been on both sides. I'd like to think I'm a decent landlord,
Yeah.
or I do my best, right, to have good housing, be reasonable, and just learn both sides of it. But I really, really hope that what we're looking at today does not end up on the ballot, because that will have very negative consequences. That, like, the fix is going to be somebody's going to big buy swoop them and throw another big building on there. How does that make
Yep.
sense? Who advocated for that, right? Where does the accountability fall if that happens? Everyone kind of disappears. It ended up on the ballot. We voted. Everybody's gone in the dust. Like,
Yep.
nobody wants to stick around for what the fallout is. So I'm doing that next level digging by being in the weeds with people and understanding. So I'm excited for it, to learn more, to be more intentional with that. But yeah, that'll be my next steps, and then share those updates regularly so that we can see what's happening and what's moving the dial.
I wish you lots of success, and I know you're gonna do great, and I know you're gonna advocate what's right. I appreciate it. You're doing great work for all of us. I think we should all speak up for what's right or wrong. We should all say what we think is right, and hear the other side too. I'd love to have,
Yes.
if you have someone pro rent control, and we can do a three-way call about this,
Yeah.
that would be a great conversation too.
I actually posted some Facebook groups earlier to just learn more about that perspective. So if I find anybody that wants to talk about it and put it into data and have this kind of conversation, I will take you up on that offer.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. I'm sure we'll do this again as we're closer to the election.
Yeah, wait. So many things are going to be on that ballot that are changing. This is just the one that struck home to me. But let's see what happens.
Good.
Let's make some
Good.
change happen, I should say.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you. This is starting my podcast again. We're back, baby. Here we go. I hadn't posted on my podcast for 2 years, I think now. So this is great. And I mean, a lot of my stuff on YouTube has been targeted for Massachusetts. This is related to housing, which is very close to what we do and what we know. But I appreciate you. I wish you tons of success out there, and I'll see you on the field.
Appreciate it. Remember, guys, we help people buy and sell houses. So wouldn't be me.
Financing on my
Well,
on
it's
my
not a house.
side.
We work together. So don't
Yes,
forget to take
yes.
us up on that. But we're here because we love our house.
We'll put our info in the description, and people can holler.
Awesome. All right.
Great.
Good
Awesome,
talking to
Meena.
you.
Thank you so much. You too.
Bye.
Bye.